Welcome back, everybody. Got another video for you with Hunterman, very special guest. Always gives great information. Disclaimer first: nothing meant for legal purposes. We're not teaching anybody to do anything illegal. In fact, a lot of what we talk about now can be used in today's times with if you take your dogs hunting or weight pull, uh, treadmill race, wall climb competitions, lure course, French lure course, all that. So a lot of what we talk about is valid today in today's time. So nothing meant for legal purposes, all history. If we speak about something, it's nothing is current. It's all past history. But without further ado, how you doing, Hunter man?
I'm good, Richard. How's everything?
Everything's going good, man. Thanks for doing this for me again. We get a lot of good responses when you're on here. This video is going to come from I put a post up in my group and ask people to, post questions for Hunter Man that they would like answered. So we're going to start off with the supplement dosage. Let's go a little bit over that. How much is enough? What type? All that stuff we talk about, when we're talking with each other. Now we can share with everybody else.
Yeah, sounds good. One of the things we want to address is how much is enough, and are we giving the right dosage? A lot of times people decide to do a keep and a pre-keep, and they're adding stuff, and they're not too sure. They just give it to them. I think we have to break down some of these things because there's going to be a lot of vital mistakes made, and it can also contribute to a downfall and a failure to your keep if it's not calculated carefully. And sometimes you can't be accurate, so whatever measurements you got is best to be at a lower amount than it is with a higher amount. What do you think, Rich?
Yep, I agree. Always give. In fact, I used to supplement my dogs every day, but I never gave them the uh, the suggested dosage. I gave them way less because a lot of that stuff is in the food already. And with supplementing them every day, that means you have to exercise them too, regularly, or at least go out there and do something with them, in a kennel on the chain or whatever. Because I used to do that with my dogs. I had a friend who fed the same thing I did and supplemented the same thing I did, and but he didn't really do anything with his dogs, and they started developing hot spots on their skin. They start losing hair and stuff like that. So basically, what he had to do was change the feed to a lower protein and fat feed because he wasn't doing that much with them. Where in my case, I was, so my dogs never had a negative impact from that feed. But even like the supplements, whether it's a vitamin, mineral supplement, or I use B15, desiccated liver, you know, uh, I gave them way less than if it said give them a tablespoon, I would give them a teaspoon, you know, like that.
Exactly. That's the best recommend way to go about it. To try to keep it simple. Today's dog man, everybody wants to be ahead of the game, so they add stuff, but they don't actually know exactly how much is to be given. And regardless of a dog, you say we had an even 30-pound dog. Every 30-pound dog is not the same and the same amount. Just because he's 30 pounds and you read the instructions on the ingredients, it says a certain amount for a 30-pound dog. That's not accurate because every dog's metabolism is different, and you know the way they digest that food is different. Their metabolism is different. So, and also dogs react differently to the different type of supplements. Some dogs have allergic reactions to certain supplements, and some don't. But you have to keep your numbers down to a lower amount, and to be careful. I've noticed a lot of big mistakes being made, and I'll address that as we're going along. But yeah, Rich, you're right. You try to keep it simple. Sometimes if you don't have a lot of experience, just go with the easiest method. That's the safest method. It won't hurt the dog, but you'll get to learn and see if it's going to be effective or not. Because the biggest mistake is people started keeping, they start the supplements and not knowing whether it's going to be good or bad. Why would you want to do that or not study or understand the type of supplements you have before the keep begins? That's what causes a lot of people to lose.
Right. You're right because and I've stressed this before, test everything you give your dog, whether it's kibble, whether it's raw, whether it's cooked, whether it's, whatever you're giving them, test it. And when you add those supplements, it takes time for them to adjust and for them to be accustomed to it and for them to be for them to, where it becomes just natural for them to have that supplement or food be part of their digestive system. When you add stuff and like you said, you haven't done your research, well, then you don't really know about it. There might be something in there that it may work for one breed, but not this breed. It may work for one of your dogs, but not another of your dogs. So you have to test it over time. It's not like you give them a few days and then they're good. For instance, the vitamin mineral supplement I use, you could see a difference in 10 days. But for me, it took like 3 months before I felt that they got the full effects from it. There were no side effects of it. And I think it's that way with anything. What do you think?
Yeah, you're 100% right. One of the biggest things I want to emphasize on is that when me and Bill and a couple of good guys that I've known for years that we've done keeps on these dogs, we were at the competition stage in the highest level in the game, and at that time there was thousands of products, and even today there are hundreds and hundreds being made in the market today. But you just don't buy it because it sounds good. You don't buy it because Joe Schmo's using it. You have to study that supplement. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. We had a yard full of dogs, and we weren't even competing at the time. Let's say we had 6 months off. That 6 months, I was trying different supplements on the dog and doing little mini pre-keeps on these dogs and seeing the effects of the same supplement on each one of these dogs at different weights and seeing if it worked. You can't go by a product name without testing the product, and the product has to be tested, a year in advance before you decide to add it to that dog. I'm sorry to say, you just don't buy something over the counter and say, hey, I'm going to add this 1 teaspoon. Okay, 1 teaspoon, but what's the reason for that teaspoon? What is it serving for the purpose of that animal? Second is, if the food has the supplements and the vitamins have supplements and the vegetables have supplements, how much are you supposed to actually give? It's already processed in the food and in plant-based material and et cetera, et cetera. How much do you add? Now you started adding these supplements and everything else contains the same ingredients or that particular ingredients in that food or supplement. Now you create an overload and you create a problem with the dog's pancreas because he has to create enzymes to digest that food, and it causes a major confusion in the dog's system. And the reason for the confusion is not because you just add it, because you're not adding it correctly and even weighing the food. If the food is offset by so much of an ounce or 2 ounces or 3 ounces, now we create a major problem because the enzymes have to be created more to digest it, and sometimes you're offsetting it. So what happens is now you're getting a rise and a spike in body temperature, blood pressure, etc., as you're working out the dog. So trying to keep it simple is the most important thing. What do you think, Richard, before I go on to what I'm going to mention in a few seconds?
Yeah, I agree. And that was a good point you made on that off time. Like for me, some people they did their dogs in the past all year long. Didn't matter the weather. But me, because I had family and that's vacation time and all that, I basically competed from September to May. Right, that's when I run my dogs. But that off time, like you mentioned, that's where I would test new stuff, test different workouts, keeps, mini keeps, full keeps, weight, how the dog looks with this much weight on them, that much weight, took off of them, see where their weight is, especially dogs that I have coming up that I'm thinking of using for the next season, right? So that's the time, like you're saying, that's a perfect time to test. And even if you did it back in the day all year long, you could still test this dog and that dog and check this and that, whatever supplement you're adding to it. So that was a good point.
Yeah, me and Bill and a few people that we work with together as a family, as a team. You know, he had a table full of about maybe 20 or 30 different type of supplements that were on the market, and we needed to find out what is what. So as we were going through this discovery process, we found some that created better oxygen levels in the dog. We found some that would the building blocks of muscle and tissue and certain things on the body that the dog needs, you know. But once we figured out the stuff, we've seen what worked, what didn't work. You know, God, I mean, we wasted a lot of money on these products just to test it. And then even when we tested this product, if it wasn't to our liking, it didn't do any purpose, it didn't serve certain things, and we didn't get an advancement in 5% or 10% more in the power train of the dog, you know, and its performance, we just discarded it and got rid of it because it wasn't a proven. You know, it's good for selling it online because it's made by this company, it's for canines. But sure, we're talking about a performance animal that has to work hard, and you need to understand them just like a person. The point I was going to get before on this is here's a simple basic thing I want to share with everyone. A guy called me up and he said, Hunter, I added this supplements for the feed and this and that. I weighed it, blah, blah, blah. But how much calories are we getting on this animal and stuff like that? And the calorie basis, I says, well, what are you doing? He goes, I add a teaspoon of this, I add that, and add that. So I said to you, you're doing this on a daily basis? He says, yes. Now, you want to know what the problem was, Rich? The problem was that he did this on a daily basis and didn't understand the dog's digestive system. And what happened was, what took anywhere from 12 to 13 hours, if he would have did it understanding the digestion rate of a dog based on from last night's feeding to the next day he dumped out, if he didn't understand the time period, he's doing this on a daily basis. So if that dog only, let's say for argument's sake, took 14 or 15 hours to digest, and he did the supplement daily, now 15 next day rolls over, there wasn't even 15, 16-hour process to digest that food. And what happens is he kept on overloading his dog on a daily basis, and the dog still did not digest what was given from the day before. This is why we created this concept of introducing the supplements and spreading it out by giving it each and every other day. So you give that 1 day down time to digest what was given the day before. Big mistake for most guys giving supplements. It's a daily thing. It's not supposed to be a daily thing. You have to understand the digestion rate, because if the dog didn't digest what's from the night before, it's going to affect them on the performance for the next day because it's not out of his system. And then you're doing this every day for 5 days a week or whatever days and your days off. Now you're screwed because now he can't moderate or calibrate his own body because of the amount that is being discharged towards him. What's your take on that, Rich?
I think that's good, man. That's good information. Yeah. And then talk a little bit about what we talked about, you know, how you add the supplements to the feed, then you mix it up, you know,
Okay.
and then put it up, you know, it has a way of distributing that supplement over a longer period of time where you're not loading it up every day, you know. Because I've never mentioned that, you know, maybe that was my little secret, but that's what I used to do. I had the food, add the stuff to it, mix it all up, and then package it up so I'd have it ready, you know, every day for the dog, especially mostly the dogs in keep, you know. And it wasn't a whole bunch of supplements all at one time. It's spread out throughout the whole 5 day amount of food that I'm giving them. So talk about that.
Okay, from experienced conditioners to those who are starting out, one of the biggest confusion is trying to keep everything on point. So you get a guy, he mixes a bowl of food and he has his supplements and then he weighs it and so far he's doing okay. But because he's not calibrating the actual amount of what's needed, and if there's a problem, he has to really pay attention to whether he has to add and subtract. Some stuff has to be removed. Some stuff have to be increased as you're going along with your training program. And as the dog distributes his weight, goes up and down, which is a fluctuation rate on a daily basis, sometimes to keep that half a pound going for the rest of 2 or 3 more days further is going to require a lot more measurement and careful. So why go through all that nonsense? Yeah, I'll give you an easy way to do it, guys. You take a big pot, a big cooking pot, and let's say we're going to use brown rice for carbs or pasta. It doesn't matter what you want. Let's say I made a big pot, like it's almost like a half of a 5 gallon bucket or half of a 5 gallon bucket worth of food in a pot, and I cooked it. So now what I do is I take my supplements. Now I know that if I gave a half a teaspoon of, say, for instance, creatine monohydrate, so I can't give that. I could give that daily to a dog, but in reality, it should not be done that way. So what did I give for? Let's say if I gave a teaspoon every day for 4 or 5 days straight during the beginning of the keep, and mind you, some of these supplements have to be removed at the end of the keep. But what I'm trying to get at is, if I gave this teaspoon of monohydrate every other day, why not give in that big bowl of mix maybe a teaspoon and a half, okay, or 2 teaspoons to be exact, instead of 4 or 5 teaspoons. Now you take your spinach and you put a can of spinach in there, and then you put, let's say, even desiccated liver, whether it's a pill, is one, 1 or 2 pills, and instead of giving a pill every day. The reason for this is, like, when you start to add your supplements, no matter what type of supplements and stuff, and you're making this whole pot of food, you mix it. Now you mix it, it's all spread out. So now, even though you gave this dog, if you were to do a calculation measurement with just a bowl, and you did a teaspoon of this, a teaspoon of that, and then measured it, and then come to where you wanted it to be exactly measured, why not kill all that frustration of trying to keep it on point when you can just do this? Take all your supplements, right? Instead of giving it on a daily basis, so you figure you got 5 days. So maybe two teaspoons is good, or a third spoon is good, and you mix it into this whole pot. And then you mix all your food and supplements, you put it in the fridge. Now, every day that you're ready to start your keep, you don't have to sit there and start pulling out pills, powders, supplements, food, and start mixing a bowl, adding this, adding that, weighing it, and killing time. You're in a point, you're in a keep. You don't have time, is an of essence. You don't want to waste time. So you take this whole bowl of food, and it's already that. All I would do is scoop up with a measuring cup amount of food that I needed. So one 8 ounce cup would actually equal to 2 cups of food. So in reality, if I'm starting with 2 cups of dog food, I would just take two 8 ounce cups, or 8 ounce cup of dog food and a half to make 2 cups. So I would put that first to start. Now I wouldn't have to add the supplements and all this stuff. And what happened with this, in a 5 gallon bucket, I'll use a bucket as a ratio. In a 5 gallon bucket, with the food mixed and all that, it's spread out. So there's not a hard amount. There's still creatine in it. There's still desiccated liver. There's still all the supplements or food or things you want to add. It's still in there. It's just that when you scoop it out, you're giving them the proper food, but at the lesser amount, and it's still the same amount in the whole feed keep, but it's kind of like lowered down. So that 2 teaspoons that you put in that food bowl in this cup will probably be like a half a teaspoon to a quarter of a teaspoon that he got from your measuring cup. So now you have to control the amount of concentration of the supplements that is going into that food bowl. So without having to face the hustle and the battle of trying to get things prepared on a daily basis. I came from work. I got to sit there. I got to mess around with all this food. All I had to do is go in my fridge, pull out the pot, scoop this part out, put it in a bowl, scoop out what I needed and measured it, and then I put it in a bowl and added hot water, waited like 5 or 10 minutes, and everything got soft. Then I put that in the food bowl and mixed it with my dry on the amount, and boom, I was ready to go constantly on the training.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's great. Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I've never mentioned it before, so I wanted to do it in this video. And let's say you're using something and it comes in a capsule, or you're using a pill, right? It's the same thing. You just open the capsule up and you can spread the stuff in there. If it's a pill, you can put it in a plastic bag, mash it down. That one pill may be good for 2-3 days, whatever it is, You mash it down and you spread it in that food. And when you do that, here's another point too. You have all this food pre-made, right? even if you're using raw, and this is what my friend did, he cut all the food up into small pieces because he wanted the dog to digest the food as quickly as possible. Where if you throw big chunks in there, you could give him the same amount of food in chunks. Let's say you give leg quarters or you give chunks of carrots or whatever it is, right? It's going to take the dog longer to digest that because it's bigger pieces. So if you chop it up, you've given them the same amount. They have the same supplements, but they're going to digest it easier, faster, get more benefit from it, and you can how you say, you can monitor the dog's weight a lot better that way.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, and that's basically what people have to do. But why, have the fuss of trying to figure out stuff? Once you realize that you make a big pot, it's already embedded in the food. It's spread out. So if even if you gave that 1 or 2 cups of food, for measuring cup full, and you put it in your keep in the food, it's already there. Now, the worst thing most conditioners face is the fact that they put a certain amount in that food bowl and they didn't realize that maybe it's slightly too much. So, but the dog needed it in his system to get the performance and to help keep him healthy and build the building blocks of what he's needed for his tissues as far as nutrients. But the thing is, when it's put in a bigger bowl and it's set up properly, in a bigger setup, it's much easier to distribute on a daily basis than it is to play around with the measurements. And like you said, with the food and the meats is all different too altogether. When we talk about beef and stuff like that, it contains a lot of B12s. And then, you give a cube. It takes so much longer for a cube of steak or any kind of beef to break down than it is when you do mince it. So that was an excellent point, Rich.
Yeah.
Also, the type of meat you feed is very different. Chicken is a lot easier to digest faster than it would be beef,
Right.
just like fish is faster than chicken.
Right.
A guy set up a post on your page about bear meat, and I just want to address this to everybody. And I'm a hunter. I eat bear meat, and it's a very stringy. It tastes like pork. It's a very good meat. But the problem with this is this: bear is a carrion, and the meat has to be cooked properly. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of parasites because they eat a lot of dead animals that are probably sick or something he killed. Or there's a lot of worms. It could be anything, just like pork, like a wild boar.
Right.
So these meats, you have to be very, very careful and make sure that you boil it and cook it good. But if you're going to use bear meat in the keep, you're going to need a lot of bear meat for the whole keep. And if you do have it, that's great. But here's the thing: bear meat spoils quick. When I hunt them and I take them and I put it I have to take the bear meat, soak it in a bucket of salt water, because unlike bear meat and venison, or any other type of meat, if I took bear meat and out of a package and left it on the table, and I took venison and left it on the table, within 6 to 7 or 8 hours, the bear meat will turn green. It'll start hiring bacteria at a super fast rate, because of what's in the flesh.
Right.
So it spoils faster. So just think, you got bear meat and you put it outside and you leave it too long. Now you're gonna have a sick dog. So I recommend people don't use bear meat. That's just my opinion.
Right.
What do you think?
Right. Yeah, that's great info, man. The other thing is talking about, how we have the food all together, right? And you just scoop up your amount.
Yeah.
You know that during some keeps you have to increase the food. So even in the good thing about that is, let's say you're feeding 2 cups during keep, and you need to increase it a quarter cup or a half a cup. All you do is you scoop out a quarter cup or half a cup food, and you're increasing the food, but not only that, you're increasing everything that you're giving them at the same time. And that's a point that Mr. Gray made one time when we were talking, because some people, they'll increase the kibble, that's a simple way to do it, has everything in it. Some people will increase only the protein and the fat, like this and that. But in his opinion, if he increased one thing, he increased everything, right?
Exactly.
So in that method we're talking
problem.
about, you're increasing everything. You're increasing the supplement, the protein, the fat, the vegetables, all that stuff. So again, it's just a simple way to do it where you got all bases covered. And if you need to increase your food during the keep, it's just another half a scoop or quarter cup or whatever it is. Simple.
Yeah, that process with the food being in the bowl, it's a lot safer to take. Okay, my dog's dropping weight too fast, so I can increase a quarter more. So I'm already increasing a quarter more based on the ready mixed product that I already have all together for that dog.
Exactly.
Now imagine someone making their own separate food and adding certain things, and then there's a problem with the dog. What was the problem? How are you going to remove it? You're gonna, if you put it in the stuff, which is the one that you have to take out, you're not gonna know. But it's a lot safer for a beginner that's doing a keep, where so you have everything prepared. So if he had to remove a quarter or add something, he's in control of that situation.
Right.
That's why back in the old days, like we said on the other page, was basically like they would buy the cheapest food, and then they add their own supplements to create their own high performance food. This is one of the things you have to do. You have to be careful. You can mix anything else, but when you're adding feed, kibble, to whatever else, you have to make sure you equalize the amount of the protein, the potassium, everything together. Because if something overrides something on a food bowl, you can be doing more harm. Wouldn't it be more safer just to scoop your mix and know that all you had to do was just basically watch the weight as it went up and down? So it was just a simple process.
Yeah, yeah. And even, I mean, if they didn't want to do all that, even if you just had the basic mixed, the kibble, the meat, vegetables, fat, like that. And then if you want to separately add your supplements, you could do it that way too. It's just a
And
simple way that, because basically once you got your feed set, that's what he eats. That's the best thing for him. And then, during the keep, it's just a matter of, increasing it a little if you have to, and you got all bases covered like that. It's going to be a rare occasion where, you know, especially if you've tested everything, where okay, this is too much for that dog or whatever. That should already have been done way before you ever start a keep, or by the time the dog is an adult. You should already
yeah,
have
another
that
thing
done.
I want to address too is be careful and watch what type of supplements you're giving them. There are supplements strictly for oxygen. There are supplements that are strictly to increase the nitrous oxide system in the dog so he can open up his blood vessels. But the problem is if you're using like weight products, weight pool, people who pick up weights, their products is too strong on a dog. It destroys the dog's arteries and does a lot of damage to them. I had another individual privately, hit me up, and one of the ingredients I saw him mixed in his feed was a big catastrophic mistake was vitamin K1. First
Yeah.
of all, it's used to coagulate the blood. So if I'm looking for a performance animal to increase his distance, why would I want to clot up his blood and reduce the oxygen flow to that animal? You can't be doing that. That's bad. And not only for that, vitamin K1, whether you don't know about this or not, is great for like after the event. But the problem is, it's also very very painful. It causes a lot of pain into the dog system and the nervous system. So you
Mm.
have to be very, very careful with that. Same thing like guys using Dex while they're giving supplements and stuff like that. Why, if you're trying to build up a dog, why would you use Dex in his system if it's an anti-inflammatory, it's shrinking down his muscles and his arteries and everything? How are you supposed to get performance in training if you're reducing everything that he needs to keep him going with the flow of his blood and oxygen levels? What do you think?
Yeah, good point. And good point. In fact, I know two pretty well-known dogmen, you know, that misused that vitamin K, and it messed their dogs up, man. And they knew their stuff, but it was something that, they did it wrong, put it that way. Because again, vitamin K, it's in stuff like greens. It was in the vitamin supplement I use, but very small dosages, you know. And people have a tendency, oh, give them 1 cc of vitamin K, every 3 days or this and that. Most of them are going to give more. They just have it in their mind that, oh, if 1 cc is good, I'm gonna give them two, and they won't bleed at all, or something like that. That's where you hurt your dog. That's where you really, really can make mistakes, and that's with anything extra you're going to give them. That's where the mistakes are made. And then by the time it's all said and done, it's too late to do anything about it. All that stuff is in their system, and it doesn't go out over a 12-hour period or 24-hour period.
Exactly. Me and Mr. Bill even, we had that discussion at one time. That was that the fact that people were using a lot of injectable supplements, and the problem with injectable supplements sometimes is, how it's being kept and taken care of, in a sense of how do you store it? Are you storing it properly? Sometimes you leave it on a counter in the sun, and it destroys the supplement you got.
Yeah.
Second of all, anytime you use an injectable, you're doing damage to the muscle tissue.
Right.
Uh, I got a dog that's in being conditioned and being, exercised. Why would I want to keep jabbing him in the muscle tissue
Yeah.
and making him get sore in the air pockets? And every time you use a syringe, you're also pushing air in there. Did you bleed out your syringe? And not only that, you're sticking them with a needle. So if you're using a needle, did you use an 18 gauge needle, 20 gauge, 16 gauge? So the size of the needle also determines on the impact on how hard you're on his muscles.
Right.
That's why a lot of times I would use an insulin needle if I had to use a. And the only time if I ever had to use any kind of injectable, it was with a dog that's very sick for aftercare,
Right.
or something like that. But in conditioning, is to me anything with a needle is a no-no.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. In fact, you know, some people will tell you, well, I just use, like you said, a smaller needle, thinner needle, right? Well, some of that stuff will not pass through that small needle. For example, that's why they tell you to use a 22 gauge or 18 gauge for penicillin or combiotic that we had back in the day. Because if you use a little thing, if you were to use an insulin needle using combiotic or penicillin, you can't push it through the needle. It's too thick. So some of the stuff, especially the oil-based stuff, you want to use a smaller needle so the damage you're doing to your dog is less. It won't pass through there. So you can't. You have to use a bigger needle, and you're cutting them every time. You're poking them every time, and this and that, and they get sore. And then you might change this side, that side, whatever. Throughout a keep, that's a lot of pokes, man. So I'm, under the skin as much as I could, but I'm against using needles too, man. It's not
Yeah,
good, man.
like you said, in a situation for the aftercare, the injury or sick dog, it's one thing. But like you said, under the skin compared to through the muscle is way totally different.
Yeah.
Under the skin, to me, will be a lot safer, easier
Yep.
to absorb at a
Yep.
faster rate. If you pop it up in the muscle tissue, you're causing sometimes a lot of gases to build up, and it becomes a part where the dog is having an issue. I was watching a dog work on a mill one day from a friend, and I was looking at him, and I seen the dog was slightly gated to the right on the hind quarter, and I'm like, did that dog get any injury or impact? He goes, no, 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 no. I said, the dog doesn't look right. Something's wrong with him. He goes, nah, he'd be fine. He'd be fine. I come to find out later that he was injecting constantly on that same side.
Yeah.
And that dog was all messed up. He couldn't even freaking run. He was like lopsided.
Yeah.
And because of that offset in the gait, that offset the other muscles. And now he was actually pulling and straining more on the other sides of working harder than the one side that he was trying to
Right.
teeter off of.
Yeah.
And now this dog was, I hate to say it, didn't look too damn good, and he didn't do good
Yeah.
because of that reason. Because now when he was performing, he got hit on that spot, and he turned around and he didn't like it.
Yeah. Yep.
It affected him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And I always, I fed kibble. I fed a good kibble, but I always soaked it too. Again, for that same reason, sometimes you could soak it in water, you could soak it in broth, but that way it digests faster and it's easier. And then with
So
with raw food, talk about this a little bit too. The water content is more than, say, if you use a cooked product or a kibble product. Yeah.
exactly, you're 100% right. The whole thing with this topic is for those with guys like me and a lot of people that had a lot of experience doing this, constantly working dogs one after the other. I didn't have time to read keeps. I didn't have time to sit down and listen to war stories. I didn't care about anything. All I cared about was the well-being of this animal, bringing them at 110%. But at the beginning, I had to keep it simple because I felt that if I made his whole big bowl, that killed the whole week of having to prepare it. And to adjust it was simply because of a measuring cup was to add or subtract. I was in control. And I didn't overload my dog with the supplements and all that stuff because for the amount that I put in that bowl, it was already spread out. And every time you gave a cup, he had it in the food, but it was at a lower point. So it didn't interfere with the rise and fall of body temperature.
Right.
So it was a simple process, an easy process. And I didn't have to worry. I came home, boom, I just put my stuff in the bowl, measured it, weighed it, boom, you're done. It was so much better than sitting there 1 teaspoon of out of this powder, open up another can, take a teaspoon out of this, take a teaspoon, and then if something is too much of, you don't know.
Right.
And sometimes it's not right. So I'd rather just put it in an easier way. And believe me, the same success is the same success you would have probably if you did mix it. But it's more time consuming to mix a bowl daily than it is to prepare one big setup for the whole keep.
Yeah.
And but when you do the one setup for the keep, it's based on what you studied from the pre-keeps and what you studied on this dog, so you knew that was the right stuff that he needed, not to start throwing stuff in and then offsetting his enzymes.
Right. I used to tell people, they this new product will come up. It's the best thing since sliced bread and this and that and the great this and that and all this marketing and all that. And I used to laugh at it and tell them that's what you said about the last stuff you used. You said that was the greatest thing since sliced bread and, and this and that. And I'm not saying there's not improvements, this and that. You have to test them, though, to see what really works and what don't. But it used to amaze me that, every few months they'd come up, this is the best stuff around. And I'd laugh and say, you said that last stuff you used was the best stuff around,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's funny because when me and Bill sat down and we would study stuff and we had products, I tested each individual product separately and products together. People don't know that sometimes when you take one supplement and you add it with a supplement from another product, sometimes those two chemicals don't mix, cause a chemical reaction, which causes a lot of problems to the dog. So it's like you experimenting with chemicals. You too much of something and the whole shit blows up. Could you imagine what the effects are of mixed supplements that have certain properties that clash with each other? So you have to be very, very careful with that.
Exactly. All right. Well,
keep it simple. Let's go on to the next.
Yeah, like that. Let's go on to. They want to know about mill work. Explain strides and gaits and like that. When is enough and like that. So talk a little bit about mill work because a lot of people not because of their situation or whatever it is, and there's a big market for treadmills for slap mills and carpet mills and this and that. So let's talk a little bit about the mills and how the dog moves.
There are so many mills in the market today. The question is which mill is going to be adequate and best for that dog. I mean, everybody only buys basically what they can afford. There are a lot of mills that are more advanced and fancy, schmancy, but a lot of times the best is not always the best because every dog is different. Some mills have better bounce on each other than others for impact. When a dog is running on a mill that's too stiff, even though it's free flowing and faster, if it doesn't have any kind of leeway and bounce to it, it can create a problem. Years ago, I had the Red River Curly, and the slats would go up and down, but it was as stiff as hell because it was a 6-footer. So what I did was I took these big rubber paddings that were about an inch thick and put it underneath each leg of the mill. So now when that dog was running, it had it like a bounce up and down, up and down. So it removed a lot of that hard impact on the feet that actually blow out the legs, in a sense where the dog's running tough on it, but then he's not pounding his knuckles, he's not pounding the heels of his paws. He's able to, kind of bounce. It was kind of funny looking when you see him bouncing, but the reality is I was able to work him harder and a little longer than if he would have had a straight up impact, because the straight up impact had a lot of problems with their feet. So when you're looking at a 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot mill, that's based on the length and the size of the dog. But you also got to realize you got to see how the mills are designed, because everyone's different. Does it have any vibration, to eliminators where you can eliminate a lot of shock? People say, okay, I have a nice mill, but it's quieter. Now, I like the loud mills. I like a mill that sounds like a goddamn freight train, because I felt my dog was able to run and exercise and ignore that. So just imagine if that dog was competing in an event and there's hundreds of people screaming and yelling. He wasn't confused. He would literally block them out of his mind and do his job because he worked in an environment that was noisy. That's why I used to play a radio next to his mill and had that mill that had these old, looks like box rollers from an old rolling machine that they use in the stores. And let me tell you, it was loud as hell, but it worked. It helped eliminate all that.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I never thought of it, but I had that same concept in my head. And what Hunterman's saying is, with a stiff mill like that, right? The mill doesn't give. So what gives? The dog's legs give. That's where you have joint problems. They stiffen up. You could have a tendon problem. So by patting that mill, what happens? It's like if you're running on dirt. You can dig into the dirt, right? The dirt gives on the dog's pads. So that's what he's emulating with that mill. The mill gives. Now it moves, right? Rather than being stiff. Especially when they get tired, and they're working hard. It's almost like they start loping if the surface is too hard, you know. And what's giving? Their shoulders are giving. Their joints are giving. The surface is not giving. So what he told you right there is gold, man, because he made it to where that mill is now giving. And the dog's not going to have those joint and tendon problems and all that stuff.
Yeah,
And
I was invited to many times to my buddies' houses when they were working their dogs, and he says, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm looking at the dog. I stand in front of the dog, and I'm watching him running, and I noticed that he was pushing to go further. He could do more, but the problem was, as he's running forward, he kept banging towards the right. Like as he's lunging forward, he was bearing a right turn.
yeah,
And I've come to find out that this dog is heavy on the right. He's right-handed
right,
because not only his right went to the turn on the front to the right, his rear end on the opposite side also shifted.
right.
So he kept pulling and hitting the side wall with his rib cage. So I'm like, okay, we got a problem here. He says the dog is too his powertrain is too strong on the right side, so you need to get him up on his left side. He goes, well, how am I gonna do that? So we took a fucking piece of wood shimmies, and I shimmed that mill slightly by an eighth of a degree of shimming. I could have done a quarter, but I put it for an eighth of a degree. It didn't seem like nothing, but as the dog started running, okay, he was bearing to the right, but after less than 5 minutes of running, he was being right dead center.
Center right there.
All because after a while, his body started to veer that, and it put more strength towards his weak side, which would have been his left side.
Right.
And he was able to develop more on the left side to adequately be even with the right side. So that's a tip. When you look at a dog and he's running forward, lunging you, happy, he's normal. But if he keeps swaying and hitting his ribs to one side, you have to do two things. You either adjust the mill as well, and also check his harness. A dog should never, and I'm going to state this whether everybody agrees or don't disagree, but I know you guys could have done it years ago. I never, ever run a dog on a slap mill, e-mill, or anything with the collar and the cable on his neck. The neck should always be free to bounce and lift and bounce and turn left and right, not having to be restricted with a collar and pulling on a collar on his throat. His harness and his body in the back the harness should be clipped towards the rear of the harness while he's running, or in the center of that harness. Not towards the front of the harness, because I don't need him straining on his front shoulders. I need him to work out. So I'm just kind of holding him in the middle of his body. He's running, but he's free flowing in action. And the reason is this: when he's bobbing up and down with the running, he's developing neck muscles and getting stronger on his neck, on his front shoulders. By you putting a collar around that neck, guess what? He's being restricted from developing those muscles because his head is kept at a certain point. He can only bob down a certain distance, and now he's locked into a straight dimensional force that he cannot control. I don't want that. I want my dog to be able to toss, turn, move, lift up his head, look at me, smile, whatever he wants to do, because when he performs, he needs to use that neck muscle and more power. By doing that, you're hurting him, you're causing throat problems, you're choking him, and he's that's not the right way to do it. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. I can be, that's my opinion only, but listen,
Yeah.
I have better results with not having the animal be constricted of something that he needs, that most important, and that's the development of his neck and shoulder muscles.
Great stuff, man. Great stuff. They have more freedom of movement, like you say. They're not restricted, and this comes from practice. It comes from observation. It's trial and error. You go through all this stuff, and you notice these things, and then you have to judge one technique versus the other. So to check what Hunterman is saying, put your dog on a mill with a collar and a lead and hook them up like that, and then do it with a harness, like he's saying, centering the dog. See which one is better. I guarantee you, for most people, it's going to be the harness, just like he explained. You know.
Yeah. The
So
harness, there are so many different harnesses. You got to be careful. Get the harnesses that stay away from the armpits, and especially near the thighs and the tights in the corner.
right.
You want his all four legs to be free. I used a special harness that they use for traveling with your dog for car seats. That was my favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
Had a fleece in the center, but nothing on the legs. It just came from the top of the shoulder to the back of in the middle of his rib cage, at the back of the rib cage, and it was just centered there. And my legs were free. Yeah. It was a fantastic product that they made for car seats for a car, but I found it better for working out a dog.
Good stuff, man. So on a meal, when is enough enough? How do you judge?
Everything
how
is
you
based
do
on
it,
the dog's eyes and mouth.
Okay.
And their breathing. If you see a dog's tongue, it tells you everything. The tails of the tongue is the most important thing, because a dog's tongue is going to tell you exactly how he's feeling while he's working out. A dog that's in good shape, that's comfortable, pacing, a lot of times the tongue's in his mouth. Or you could be slightly open, but the tongue stays stationary behind his fucking lower canines. Now, if a tongue is sticking out on each side of the mouth, from the left side to the right side, he's gasping for air. He's trying to retain moisture. He's not getting it. If a tongue is sticking out way past the lower canines, he's trying to lap up anything that's coming out of his nostrils, or trying to gulp more air to compensate for the temperature rise in his body. So a straight out tongue past the canines forward is actually, he's trying to calibrate his own temperature. He's having a problem with that. Well, what's too much and how much? Guys like to speedball their dogs. I think, honestly, if I did like 15 minutes on the mill, whatever the schedule is, let's say it's every day, 5 days a week, and you got Saturdays, Sundays off, or you got 1 or 2 days off during the center of the week. The bottom line is that I would do that 15 minutes on that. First I hand walk the dog, let him loosen up, empty out, make sure he's 100% empty, and loosen up those ligaments. Then when I work him out 15 minutes, after that, I take him out, I hand walk him again, and cool him down for 30 minutes, then massage him. But here's the thing, that 15 minutes was done once a day, every day, according to the schedule, what I put on Blueprint. Then when the following week came in, I can increase that extra 5 minutes. Now, as each week goes, and I'm increasing, I'm giving him a chance to adjust his body, breathe, calibrate himself, regulate his own body temperature, and then when I reach that 35-minute max and he's comfortable at a full stride, then I know he's ready. I see the tongue's in his mouth. He's not glassy-eyed. He's focused. Yep. But what happened, I'm sure you've seen that many times, Richard, that these dogs get gassed out. Guys are running them 90 miles an hour, pushing them so hard, and guess what? Come time to perform with them, dogs bag out at 20, 30 minutes. They can't even breathe. I got an 8-year-old dog that, back in the old days, that, 2 hours and 25 minutes, 8 years old, had his mouth closed, didn't even look like he was even, there was not an ounce of exhaustion on him, but yet I kept it simple.
Yep. That's great stuff, man. No, that's true, because like you say, and I tell people this all the time too. Look, if you condition the dog properly, and as you increase the work and the time, whether it's distant or time, however you do it, right? They're working harder and working better and recuperating better at the end of the keep than they were at the beginning. But like you said, a lot of these guys, a dog will run 100 miles an hour. So they think you got to push them, and they want them to run that mill 100 miles an hour for 30 minutes. That'll kill them. You just ruined your dog. And that's why, like you said, that's why you see these dogs They go out there in 20, 30 minutes, they're done. Gassed out, can't do it. Worst you ever seen. And it's because they overwork them in that respect. You can't, sprinters don't run that fast, that long. Greyhound races, most of them are between 15 and 45 seconds, and they run balls out. But they couldn't do that for a mile. It would kill them. And that's a problem that people have with their dogs. They get them on that mill. Oh, he runs that mill good. I'm going to keep him going. I'm going to do an hour at 10 miles an hour. That'll kill the dog, man. Back off.
Yeah, that whole word, I'm gonna give him an hour. I must have heard that 1,000 times in the dog world.
Yeah.
You know, Richard, I sometimes scratch my head and say, what the fuck is he doing an hour?
Man.
The word conditioning means to condition a body at a slow rate for development. Once the dog starts to develop, then you can increase the workout to increase the performance. So here I worked the dog 35 minutes, right? In the first 20 or 30 minutes of performing, he didn't even lose the first pound of body weight. He only lost the first pound or a half a pound of body weight until after the hour mark.
Right.
You see the difference? And yet here's a guy, his dog ran 90 miles an hour for an hour. But as soon as he went to do his thing, he lost the first pound and a half in less than 20 minutes. And then as it gone longer, he already lost another pound and a half. Now this dog is 2 pounds to 2.5 to even 3 pounds under.
Yep.
Why?
After the
Because
hour mark, yeah.
the exertion was so fast, the dog never had a time to adjust his blood pressure, his heart, learn how to breathe under pressure. And the ligaments doesn't have time to heal because he's doing this shit every day and over an hour hard pounding it. You know, some guys swear by it, but you want to know something? I love to go the distance. I have a 20-minute finisher. They'll make no difference.
Right.
But if I meet something in equal quality, it's going to come down to the conditioning. And I don't want to fall short.
Exactly.
So that's why I do what I do.
Exactly. I have a friend. I had a friend back in the day, one top conditioner, man. He never did his dogs on a mill more than 20 or 30 minutes, And I'll say this as a counter. If your dog is walking the mill or he's trotting the mill a little bit like that, you can do them for an hour because the pace is very slow, and you can build endurance that way. Or you use an e-mill and you set it at 3 miles an hour like that. You can do more time on. What we're talking about is you have a dog who's a great worker. He gets up on that mill and he runs it and runs it, runs it. Then he slows down his pace and he runs it again, runs it again. If you do that too long, that's where you're going to hurt him, man. You're going to kill him. Because, you know how bulldogs are. They're tough. They're not going to tell you, oh, I'm sore today. Oh, I don't feel good. My arm hurts or whatever. They go and they do the work. So that's why you have to monitor the dog. You have to have the common sense to know, hey, that's too much. And those indicators, like you said, the tail, the tongue sticking out, the reason they stick their tongue out and put it to the side is because they're trying to take more air in. The tongue is blocking the airflow. And that's when you've pushed them. That's when you've overexerted them. It should never get to that point. Having their mouth open and the tongue, you can see the tongue and it stays, like you said, that's perfect. But if it sticks way out like that, again, he's trying to get his tongue out of the way so he can get more air in. And they can't regulate their breathing that way. And again, their temperature will go up and their heart rate goes up. And it just, man, it's a disaster.
One of the things I want to also explain, especially with the mill, but a lot of guys is that even though there's many mills, you could get what you can afford. Some have a 13-inch wheel, 14-inch wheel, 15, even a 16-inch wheel in the front. Each wheel is based on the amount of spin rotation on that and the torque of what's going on when the animal's working out. So not every mill is created equal. So regardless of what mill you have, it doesn't really matter at the point. But what the point is this: you have to take a magic marker and mark a line on the middle of your slat and put that line in the center of the mill itself. And then on your frame, you make a marker and make sure that the both lines meet. Then you take your belt and you swing it forward as fast as you can and see how many times that line meets the other line. Count it. Is it 5, 6, 10, 15 times? For every rotation, how many rotations it takes by the time it gets around until it stops. So what I'm getting to is that a 15-inch wheel compared to of a 6-inch wheel or whatever, the spin is going to be different. It's going to be a difference in distance. So what I used to do is I had a timer for, let's say, 10 minutes. I set the timer on 10 minutes, and I roll it down real fast and see how it does. Or I put the dog on the mill for 10 minutes, and while he's running, I'm counting 10 minutes. So now what I did was when I went road working and I road worked the dog, and I did 1 mile. I kind of calculated hand walking at a normal pace. How long did it take me to do 1 mile? So if it took me 15 minutes to do 1 mile, so now the mill and running is going to be at a shorter time. So maybe now when you put that dog on that mill, that 10 minutes will equal 1 mile. So now you know that on your timer, because of the rotation, he gave me 12 or 13 rotations for every 10 minutes, which would equal 1 mile. So now, with that said, I was able to understand the machine mechanism itself. So when I set my timer and I worked him, the speed variance is going to be various. It's going to give you a little bit either faster or slower. But every time that went around in a circle, I went to the store. I says, you know what? I want to buy me a bicycle mile marker. So I bought it. I hooked it on the machine, onto the slat mill. I put the magnets there by the wheel. I calculated the turns according to the measurements I took from the center of the slat. Now, when the dog was running with the timer at 10 minutes, it showed me 1 mile on my speedometer. It didn't matter if he was going faster or slower. But as soon as I knew he had to do 1 mile, I knew it was time to get him off. He was done for the day. So whether I do a mile for the whole week, a mile and a half the next week, 2 miles the third week, 3 miles, 4 miles. But I never ever did a dog 6 miles. There's no need for it. You know?
Yep.
That's why when somebody says, I'm going to walk a dog 6 miles, I said, you killed the fucking dog, because 1 mile equals 2. Because when you walk one way and you come back, you're walking a mile one way and coming back, so that's 2 miles. So if you had to do 6 miles, you're doing way too much. So I want to work my dog in stages. So that's how I used to calibrate the wheel size with the rotation of the speed based on that particular mill, times the measurement on the bike speedometer that I hooked onto that. And then once I got it figured out with the timer, I could set the timer for 10 minutes. I'd run him and work him. As soon as that thing gives me beep, beep, I said, okay, it's time to get him off. He's done for the day. I didn't have to push him further. Even if he wanted more, I do not give him more. I want to work him slowly in stages, develop to be a performance horse. I want to be the thoroughbred of the box. You understand? I want to be able to outlast the competition if they got me to the distance. I don't even have to worry about breaking a sweat if I get into a game one. That was the terminology in my head. So I worked them like in stages. What do you think, Rich?
I think you're spot on, brother. That's the way I did. Build them up slowly over time. Don't push them too hard. And you mentioned, even if the dog wants to do more, they should want to do more, but you don't have to let them do more. That's when you can back off. And the other point I want to make is, people talk about this meal, that meal, or cat meal, or they always ask me, what's the best thing to use? A table, a meal, a cat meal, a treadmill, even all this stuff, slot and carp, all that. I tell them there is no best. And the point is, whatever type of equipment or whatever method you're using, learn how to use that. If you have this type of mill, and you go, well, the mill ain't no good. It's not generally the mill; it's the way you're using it. So
Exactly.
he just gave you a bunch of how to calibrate this and that, and time this and that. That's what you have to do with whatever equipment you're using. For example, let's talk about somebody mentioned flirt poles, right? I used to use either a long stick, or a PVC pipe, and then I'd tie a hide or something on the end of it, and that was my flirt pole, right? Well, my buddy later on, he used the method of using a fishing rod and just put a little plastic bag on it, or a little string of a rope on it, which, because PVC pipe and wood, they get heavy. So if you're out there for 5 minutes, it could be real heavy, right? With a fishing pole or even a bullwhip, it's real light and you can get more movement, quicker, faster reflex movement. So the point is uh, whatever type of equipment or method, whatever you're using, learn how to use it properly and get the best use out of it, the best effects. It's not usually, well, this cat mill keep ain't no good. It's not that. It could be the surface, it could be the length, it could be it's not free turning, it could be all these different types of things. So when you do use whatever it is you're using, learn how to use it properly and get the benefits of it, rather than just say, oh, that mill ain't no good. Oh, carpet mill ain't no good. Oh, slap mill ain't no good. No, it's not. They've been used too many times by too many top conditioners effectively to put their dogs in good shape to say this type of mill ain't no good. It's not that. It's how you're using it. It's the person. It's not the mill.
That's perfectly well said and so damn true. You know, now I'll just jump on the Flirt Pro for 1 second. Now, a lot of people say, what is the best way to use a Flirt Pro? First of all, I was watching the guy do one in the field, and I see the dog jumping on, he's zipping it, jumping up in the air, and everything else. I says, is that dog, is he Superman? And the guy goes, no, why? I says, why the fuck is he jumping up in the air? He goes, oh, because that's how I do my Flirt pose. And first of all, a dog is not supposed to jump up in the air, because if he's hunting a wild boar or performing, he's not performing in the air.
Yeah.
Second is, you're picking his attention to look up. That's a danger zone if you're performing into a wild boar in the Carolina swamps. If your dog is on a wild boar and he starts looking up in the air, that boar is gonna fucking gaff him right in the freaking chest, or right in his throat, or because he peeked up. That's to me is improper way of doing it. I believe that if you flirt him based on the height of his shoulder blades, and you make him go around in circles, left or right, so he learns to twist and turn and gain balance with his footing. The object of Flirt pole is the control of his footing, so he's able to dance. It's like a boxer. A boxer can only win a fight as long as he can stand on them legs. Same thing with a game dog. He can only perform if he can stay on his legs. If he can stay on his legs and dance and not be confused, he can handle the stress of constantly moving without getting tired, you've accomplished your mission. Sometimes people like to lay him on the ground and let him, yeah, that's okay if his head's down a little bit. You can like tease him or whatever. But the main thing about in conditioning on the sense of the Flirt pole is creating a mindset that is going to exercise his body to a certain way. It doesn't matter how fast or hard you whip it or whatever, what type of Flirt pole you're using. The question is, it's like you want to keep him down to his level. You don't want him too low. You don't want him too high. Same thing like spring pole. People got a spring pole, dog jumps up, he grabs it. Oh, he's working a spring pole, and he's jerking it up, but it doesn't serve any purpose when it comes down to the reality of what the performance is. So that's the problem. Second problem in the whole conditioning process with anything, whether you're using carpet, e-mill, slab mill, is the mental conditioning of keeping this dog happy. Sometimes you work a dog in one particular way too long, he becomes boredom, and he becomes mentally distracted with boredom. That's why even with a slab mill, we used a big long mirror, and then once in a while when he wasn't looking or nothing, and as he was going doing his thing, if I wanted him to pick up the pace, I flashed him with the mirror, and then he started going at it and running more, and then after 2 seconds or 5 seconds I would count, I turn it backwards and then slow him back down.
I did the same.
So the mental conditioning of keeping an animal happy, spreading your training in different days differently, will keep him motivated. You keep a dog working the same way constantly every day, 5 days a week for your keep, is going to suck, because he ain't going to want to do it. He gets worse at the end of it. He's not happy. Mental conditioning is the most important conditioning of all conditioning, is to get the dog's mindset of wanting to perform and work without boredom and burning him out.
Well said, brother. And there's no better way to end this one with that. Our time is running out here, but man,
Okay.
there's gold here, Hunterman, and people, I'm sure they always enjoy it, man. I get a lot of good feedback when I have you on here, and we'll just keep doing them till we can't no more.
Yeah,
But
I appreciate your help with everybody on. I hope you enjoyed your day. Just keep it simple. Stop with these crazy products. Test your products. You know, even if it takes you a year or two. You don't just introduce a product and say, I'm going to give it to him in his keep when you've never tested it. You're only causing catastrophic failure. You might have a problem with the dog. You can over intoxicate them, and you can also poison them because you're mixing them up with other supplements that are not compatible to each other. Every supplement works a different way, so keep it simple. That's why I come on the shows and I come off the show. Sometimes we see people on the page face certain problems. We help them and make them better and make them have a little bit of a broader understanding. We don't know everything. We could be wrong, 100% right, and you take it as you want to take it. But, you know, experience comes to play. We've seen too many mistakes, me and Richard, so we want to help you at the best way we can. Thank you for your help and your services to everybody. Rich.
Perfectly said. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.